Hi, this is Carl with Small Biz Thoughts, and this is another SOP video for managed service providers. Today I want to talk about getting started with financial projections. Now, there's only a handful of things you really need to know if you're getting started. First one is, where does your money come from? That's it. Where does your money come from? So when you look at your profit and loss, at the top should be your revenue. And when you look at that revenue, you should know where your money comes from. Does it come from hourly labor? If it does, you need to know that there is an absolute limit on how much money you can make. Whether you have one person, two people, 10, 100, 1,000 employees, doesn't matter. If all you sell is hourly labor, there's an absolute limit on the number of hours you can sell because there's an absolute limit on the number of hours you can buy. Now, if you sell services, well, then life gets a little better. With services, there's no limit. Think about, for example, Microsoft 365. You could sell 1,000 licenses, you could sell 10,000, you could sell 1,000,000, you could sell 100 million licenses. Now, there's a certain amount of labor involved in setting those up and so forth, but the labor happens up front. There's a setup. There's like taking a credit card and setting up an account, but month after month after month, there's essentially no labor in maintaining the services that you've sold. And so, recurring revenue is a beautiful thing because there's no limit to the amount of money you can make when you stop trading dollars for hours. Bottom line, top line, whatever it is, labor is a limited commodity that you can buy or sell. Services could be any number, but obviously you want to start with a realistic number. And then you've got other things that you sell. Project labor, for example. I love flat fee projects because you've got a certain amount of income and then the profit is determined by how efficiently you provide that. So list the things that you use to make money, to bring money into your company. At some point, you have to look at your expenses, and we talked about that in the last video. Here's the mindset I want you to have. It is better to make $100,000 profit on $350,000 versus making $100,000 profit on $500,000 worth of revenue. The reason for this is simple. It takes a lot more work to bring in $500,000 than it does to bring in $350,000. And you know, the numbers, just add a zero if you need to. It's easier to bring in 3.5 million than it is to bring in 5 million. So making the same amount of profit on a smaller amount of revenue means that your profit margin is much higher. So when you think of it in those terms, don't get caught up with the calculation of cranking the wheel that you buy an hour of labor, let's say for $20, you sell an hour of labor for $150, and you take that and crank and crank and crank, and out comes this profit year after year, month after month. That's not the way the world works. Things get very complicated when they get big, and that includes your revenue. So think in terms of how much revenue you have and what your targets are. And you can have any target you want. After all, between people just barely scratching by and companies making billions of dollars a quarter, there is every company in the world. So your company is somewhere between those two. You need to think about money on a regular basis and be very realistic about it. And I'll give you a very simple reason why. Gartner says that about 25% of the people in our industry are not making a profit. Think about that. Literally stop and think about that. If you are not making a profit, you must immediately pull the handbrake and stop what you're doing. Are you charging enough money? Are you charging enough per hour? Are you charging enough per license? Are you charging enough per month? It is okay to raise your rates and stop being afraid that you're going to lose customers. It is my belief that virtually everybody who's losing money in this business is either not charging enough or they have set up their business so that it can't make money. And I can tell you, I've done a lot of coaching, and I have met one company after another that simply is not set up to make money. I have talked to coaching clients who have had literally $4, $5, $6, $7, $10 million companies that are not profitable. And there's no excuse for that. When you think about how much money flows into and out of your company, if you're not making money, you are doing something wrong. The reason I started a couple of managed service businesses, and I joke with friends that I'm that close to starting another one, is because it's one of the most profitable businesses I've ever seen in my life. And yeah, I create profitable businesses and I know how to do it right, but I have been completely open and honest with you about everything I do. If you want to know how I run a profitable business, read my books. And this is not intended as an ad for my books. Oh, wait. Yes, all of these videos are intended to be ads for my books. But the point is, in my books, I don't have theories about how to run a company. I don't have theories about the way that I would do this. I literally have documentation of how I ran my companies. And it would never occur to me to run a company that is not profitable. That's not how you put your kids through college. That's not how you buy a house. That's not how you set yourself up for retirement. So when you think about the money inside your company, you have to be brutally honest with yourself about what that looks like. And you have to have realistic expectations and you have to have realistic goals. And if you're not reaching them, stop what you're doing and go do something else. That might mean that you have to get rid of an employee and do some of the work yourself until you reach a certain point. It might mean that you have to fire clients who you can't afford. It might mean that you have to go get some more clients who can afford what you need to charge. It might mean that you have to raise your rates. It might mean lots and lots of things, but those things are going to be directly related to money. The things you need to do are not going to be switch your RMM, change your PSA, find a new antivirus, take a class on cybersecurity. Those things will not have a direct effect on your money. What will have a direct effect on your money is the price you charge, the clients you have, the employees you have. When you think about your business, the single biggest expense for virtually everybody watching this video is your payroll. And if it's not, there's only one reason that payroll is not your biggest expense. You are a sole proprietor who is not paying yourself enough money or not paying yourself at all. So if you're in that position, you need to start paying yourself on a regular basis. And if you don't do that, you shouldn't have any employees. And I know that's brutal and people don't want to hear it. But the bottom line is, the reason I'm passionate about what I do, I am tired of meeting people in this industry who have been here 10, 15, 20 years and are not making money. It is absurd to not be making money in this. I literally got an email just the other day from somebody because I had a sample worksheet where I had put up an hourly rate of $175 an hour. And he said, "Do you think that's realistic that I could charge $175 an hour?" He was in a major city in California. And I was like, dude, I raised my rates to $165 an hour in January of 2008. And I remember that only because later that year, the recession hit. And I was very happy in October of 2008 that I had raised my rates to $165 an hour. When I look back, 2008, the beginning of that recession, first of all, it was one recession ago, but it was also 13 years ago. And here's the easiest thing. If you don't think that you could charge that much money, go down to Best Buy, pick up a brochure, look at the hourly rate charged by the cyber geek goober nerds, whatever they call themselves. If the Geek Squad can charge the rates that they charge, you can charge more than them. So whatever they're charging you in your neighborhood, you need to be charging at least that much. And don't apologize for your rates. You are a professional in an industry that is now more regulated and has more expenses related to government compliance and insurance than almost any industry in the United States today. Let's assume you're good at what you do. You deserve to be paid for it. And you deserve to charge what you need to charge so that you can make money. So when you look at your finances and you start laying out what things are going to look like, I want you to be very, very realistic. And I want you to start with a big, big number of what you want your profit to be. And then figure out, given your system, what you have to do to make that happen. And if you're not at that number, let's say that that number is $1 million in profit. If you're not making $1 million in profit, that's cool. How are you going to get there? How many years will it take? What steps will you have to take? And the reason that it's okay to think in these terms is that there are companies who make that kind of profit. They did start from something less than that and work their way up. And you can too. There's absolutely no reason that you cannot be as profitable as you choose to be. But you have to build a plan. Again, as I mentioned last time, nothing happens by itself. If you want to make big money, you have to make it happen. You want higher rates, you have to raise your rates. You want to charge more per hour, you have to raise your rates. You want clients who are going to pay those kind of rates, you have to go get those clients. So it's hard to think about when you are losing money and struggling. But it's when you are struggling that you have to make the decision that you're tired of struggling and it's time to get out of this. And continuing to do what you're doing, losing money, will never, ever, ever lead to making $1 million. The only way you're going to make a whole bunch of money is you have to figure out what changes have to happen to put that in place. And then, once you've got it all figured out, the money will begin to flow. And I'm not saying it's easy by any stretch of the imagination. Trust me, I also had some very difficult times in the recession of 2008, but I got through it and figured out how to turn the system around and make a whole bunch of money. And you can figure it out too. You just have to be realistic about where you are and make the tough decisions that'll get you headed in the right direction. If you have any questions, comments, whatever, put them down below. I'll be happy to respond to anything you have. And, by the way, you should just go buy all my books. For Small Biz Thoughts, this is Karl Palachuk, wishing you the best of luck in your managed service business.